This episode of Barrel Tasting with Howard Fletcher is brought to you by my friends at 10th Ward Distilling Company. 10th Ward Distilling Company is a woman-owned craft distillery located in the heart of historic downtown Frederick, Maryland. Known for their non-traditional and unconventional approach, 10th Ward produces a variety of spirits including whiskey, gin, limited one-time only releases, and Maryland's first and only absinthe. And let me tell you folks, that's something special. You can visit their cocktail lab and barrel room in downtown Frederick for tastings, spirit flights, cocktail creations, tours, and private events. And check this out. They just produced their first canned cocktail. It's called Corpse Reviver No. 10. With a name like that, you know it's got to be killer. Listen, it's got the Jennifer-inspired gin, gold medal absinthe, lemon, chai vanilla bean simple syrup. It even has lavender bitters. All that stuff together is delicious, folks. And you can get it for curbside pickup if you order it off of their website. So visit their website at 10thwarddistilling.com for more information, or follow them on Facebook or Instagram at 10th Ward Co. That's TenthWardco. And now, let's get started.
You know, we just wanted to create, Denizens is all about creating like a tap list that can like really resonate with a lot of different people. I'm not expecting everybody to come in here and be like, every beer is amazing, but hopefully that there's a flavor profile that aligns with someone that just came in to have a pint and doesn't want to think about what they're drinking.
This is Barrel Tasting with Howard Fletcher, a podcast that shines a light on the best winemakers, craft brewers, and spirit distillers in the DMV. So grab a glass of your favorite adult beverage. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, and let's get started.
Thank you, Asia. Hello and welcome to Barrel Tasting. I'm Howard Fletcher. And in this episode, I'll be speaking to someone who brewed the very first pint served in Silver Spring in Montgomery County, Maryland, since the end of Prohibition. Now, as my listeners know, Silver Spring is my hometown, so I just had to speak to this dude. Jeff Ramirez is the co-founder and chief beer officer of Denizens Brewing, located in the heart of downtown Silver Spring, Maryland. Born and raised in New Jersey, Jeff has brewed his entire professional life, having previously worked in breweries in Philadelphia and in Boulder, Colorado. He's called the DMV his home for the last 7 years, and we are very lucky and appreciative to have him. Since opening Denizens along with Emily Bruno and Julie Verratti, his partners, in 2014, Jeff has brewed over 150 beers. That's a lot of suds. This will be my first interview for this podcast that I've done virtually, so the sound quality will not be as crisp as normal. However, the conversation was superb. So with no further ado, here's my conversation with Jeff Ramirez of Denizens Brewing Company. Let's all raise a glass. All right. Hi, Jeff. Jeff Ramirez. Thank you for being on the show.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Jeff, you is the co-founder and chief beer officer of Denizens in Silver Spring.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And Riverdale.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll get to that. Yeah, you have a place in Riverdale. I'm a native of Silver Spring, so it's kind of near and dear to my heart. And first, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into brewing and some of your background?
I kind of decided that I wanted to get into the business probably back in 2007. I was still an undergrad. I was junior year and was trying to really find my way or what I wanted to do. I'm always someone who wants to like have a plan in action. And nothing was really striking me from the normal academic pathway. So I decided, I'd already been a consumer of craft beer and enjoyed it. Kind of saw that it was on the uptick, at least back then, and tried home brewing because of that. A lot of other people actually home brewed, found passion behind it, and then they wanted to get in the industry. I actually chose to home brew to see if I did like it. found out that I did, was hooked pretty much immediately. And then 2008, once I graduated, I was in search of an apprenticeship because back then people still did that. I'm from the New Jersey tri-state area, so went to every local Jersey brewery at the time, which was not that many, as well as deep into Brooklyn, which at that time was Kelso Brewing, which I don't think is in existence anymore. But basically, everybody said, no, we don't do that or don't have any need. I found a local restaurant, Trap Rock Brewery and Restaurant, that I just got a serving job. And a few months in, speaking with the head brewer there, he allowed me to come in the mornings for like 4 days a week. And that's how I started.
Okay. I understand that you did some brewing in other places in the U.S., like in Boulder, I believe.
Yeah.
Where else did you brew? What took you out there? Did you want to get an apprenticeship? Is that why you had to move?
No. So, again, this was all kind of new to me. It wasn't really a clear path. So once I got into Trap Rock, I just did everything I could to keep in the head brewer's ear, like just to let me to go in the brew house. He was nice enough to show me even filtration and all that stuff. It was a small brew pub, but had a lot of different aspects, brewing lagers, brewing traditional ales. I then went and while working there, I took some science classes that I could have taken at my undergrad, but I was not seeing the foresight. But I needed to go to Siebel Institute, which I applied for. And I applied and basically was looking for other jobs. This other job popped up in South Jersey, right outside Philadelphia, and was at Iron Hill Brewery and Restaurant.
Okay.
I think they're coming on close to 20 locations now, but back then this was for their 8th location. And I went down there just to talk to the owner about just getting into the business. And he said experience is the best, but understand education is there. So I did end up applying to Siebel. And once I got in, I had an interview there and got a job there. So it was kind of like this double-edged sword. Do I go to this education or do I go get experience? And luckily for me, they allowed me to go and work there as a brewer and then take, a few weeks at a time off to go to do the intensive courses. So I actually split this 12-week course over 2 years while working at Iron Hill. Once I got that complete, I was there for a little bit longer and then moved out to Colorado where I worked at the Mountain Sun breweries. So I brewed at all 3 of their locations, Original Mountain Sun, Vine Street, which is in Denver, and then Southern Sun, which is in South Boulder. I got the opportunity to really experiment there. My title was like the head brewer of Mountain Sun, but because we shared all the beer, what I really ended up doing was doing pilot recipes, kind of newer, just experimental stuff, as much as they allowed me to. And also the barrel aging program down at Vine Street, where we use their extra cellar area just to do, mixed culture stuff and all that.
Well, I asked because something must have really lit a fire under you, because not only did you come to Silver Spring, I want to hear what brought you here for that, but you went on. See, some people just brew because they like it, and
Right.
maybe they end up being a brewer for somebody else. But you came to Silver Spring and ended up opening a place with your 2 other partners, a brewery here in Silver Spring, and you were responsible for the first pint that was sold here, like since Prohibition. So that's commitment. So tell me about that. When was the moment you decided, I want to not only brew beer and be good at it, but own a brewery? And not only that, we're going to open one in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Well, I mean, I was always kind of going where the opportunity was. So, I mean, I was from North Jersey. The opportunity for Iron Hill was in South Jersey. So I moved down to Philadelphia, lived there for 2 years. Had an opportunity to move out to Colorado. And then because of that, I basically searched for jobs and found a job before moving out there. And basically what brought me out here was Emily and Julie, my business partners. They're also, part of my family. My sister-in-law, Christina Bruno, is Emily Bruno's sister. So there was that link. And basically at a Christmas dinner, they asked if I'd be interested in opening a brewery in Silver Spring. And of course I'm not from Maryland, so I was just like, where's that?
Right. Right.
And they explained it, they had a lot of passion for the area. Julie grew up in Montgomery County. I'm not sure actually how long they've been living there, but it's been quite some time. And they're in the Woodside neighborhood in Silver Spring.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And basically, I was like, I'm definitely open to it. We got to have a business plan of sorts, and Emily and Julie right away got it going. And that summer, this is Christmas, and then that summer they kept paying me about all this interest, and then finally I got out there. I think in the fall of 2013 to look at a location, and then we signed a lease at the Silver Spring location November 2013.
I love
and that's the beginning of it.
Yeah, well, see, I love hearing those stories because usually things like that come together mostly by design because you have to have the skills in order to be a brewer. But then there's this other element, the happenstance. For you, it was the Christmas dinner.
Right.
And it brought you out to a place called Silver Spring you'd never heard of. But when you got out here, you decided, and I want to hear this too, when you got out here and decided to open this place, because I used to do some reporting in Annapolis. And so I know that Comptroller Francho and a lot of people really pushed for breweries to open up and be able to serve their product on premises and all of that. But it doesn't sound like that was around when you decided to buy into building this place or building this business or forming this business. So tell me how that kind of unfolded.
Well, Julie Verratti, my other business partner, she basically asked me and very casually, how do you want to sell your beer? And I'm just like, well, wouldn't we want to sell it in every avenue possible so that we can diversify and make sure that we can make as much money as we can, whether it be, if we have the ability to produce more, we sell it beyond our tap room. So basically every avenue. And Montgomery County did not allow that. And that's, before even starting this venture, I remember I was speaking with two people, one from Allagash, but she was at Sly Fox at the time, and then one from Dogfish Head, sales reps that I was friends with in Philadelphia, basically warning me about Montgomery County and the laws and all that stuff.
Right.
And, because of the Department of Liquor Control, they mark up your beer beyond a normal markup of a distributor. So you have the distributor, then you have the markup from there. So you're losing on it. It's going to this one warehouse. It was a whole kind of nightmare aspect for your product, basically. And so Julie takes it on herself to go and lobby for the ability to self-distribute, which allows us just not to sign with a distributor before really knowing what our brand is. So we can have the in-person communication with customers in Montgomery County. Also the ability to sell pints over directly to consumers. We didn't have a kitchen of our own at the time, but we did link with a barbecue joint, and we just had to have a certain percentage that was 60-40 beer sales to food sales, away from, I think it was inverse before, or at least 50-50. But yeah, we had all that stuff. So Julie's just like, yeah, sure, we'll do this. And lobbied for it, got it changed. And I was like, okay. And so that allowed us to do what we wanted to kind of, set the stage for Denizens in Silver Spring, in Montgomery County, in Maryland, of like what we were doing. And, the fun part of it is just thinking about with our core beers is that, we added one to it, which is Animal Hazy IPA. But Born Bohemian, Czech Pilsner, Southside Rye IPA, and the third-party triple were all on the opening tap list. And then our two seasonals were the other two taps, Lowest Lord ESB and then Big Red Norm, which are, they're about biannual seasonals. So it takes over half the year. But.
So those 5 flagship brands have been there since day one.
Right.
And they've stayed.
They stayed.
So tell me, how does it feel to be a trailblazer? Because since then, there's been a lot of breweries, or a number, that open up in Montgomery County, and you guys really busted the door down for them.
I mean, I don't really think of it that way, because
But you did.
A lot of people, I guess I think of it as I got to, at least from my experience in brewing, I got to learn from a lot of senior people along the way about just making beer. how to run a brewery, all that kind of stuff. So I don't ever think of myself as a trailblazer or pioneer in that aspect. If anything, Julie would be, that part for just changing the laws and just being able to just not take no for an answer. Me personally, I would have been like, okay, those are the rules. That's what we're doing. But
So you started, or you have successfully established a barrel aging program there at Denizens.
mhm, yeah.
Tell me about getting that up to speed, and what were your goals in setting that up?
Uh,
I mean, what type
yeah,
of beer did you have in mind to age? That's what I was
I would
asking.
say it's definitely mixed culture sour was always the goal. However, we do and have always done clean beer, such as our Chapless Horseman, which is a Russian Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels, which is kind of a no-brainer beer for barrel aging. Um, we've done a bunch of different stuff where we've had quadruples just aged in red wine barrels, neutral. We've done um, mixed culture where it be, wild yeast, quote unquote, like the Brettanomyces genus, lacto and pedio bacteria in there. And basically, we just wanted to create, Dennis is all about creating like a tap list that can like really resonate with a lot of different people. I'm not expecting everybody to come in here and be like, every beer is amazing, but hopefully that there's a flavor profile that aligns with someone that just came in to have a pint and doesn't want to think about what they're drinking. But,
So at present, like how many taps? Well, let me tell the audience that
mhm,
if they tend to listen to this later on, we're recording this in the fall, actually the day after the election, in the
yeah.
right in the middle of the COVID situation. So for in store, I'm sure it has changed since
Mhm.
that has come on. But when you were before that happened, before the pandemic, how many taps would you have active or flowing at the
So
time?
at the Riverdale location, we have 20 drafts inside.
Mhm.
And at the Silver Spring location, we actually have like 3 bars. So it's kind of more haphazard. We have the beer garden, which is one of our bigger draws, just with the outdoor seating,
Uh-huh.
large outdoor seating that's comfortable. That has 20 taps out there. Inside, we have a split system for the upper tap room and lower tap room that, we'd have 10 on each, but then we'll have the 4 on this kegerator is more for specialty. So for slower moving, kind of the barrel age aspect beers that we didn't think need to be ran through a long line because the volume is not having the same velocity as these other ones.
Tell me about the name. Tell me about Denizens.
The name?
Yes.
Uh, so I mean, when it comes to the, Emily, Julie, and myself, besides the family link, we weren't lack of a word, like at the time there were a lot of heavy metal breweries coming out. Just like more culturally outside of craft beer, they would have kind of something that would link them all together, and then they want to open a brewery together. We just like the idea of having a place for people to kind of come enjoy themselves. Really, just any kind of person. Silver Spring is such a diverse community from backgrounds that we wanted to make sure that everybody that is coming, basically at walking distance can come in, feel like they have a home, have a beverage they can enjoy. And that was basically the goal. And Denizens, as a local, as a regular, like however you describe it, it just kind of encompasses our location. We want the local people to come and congregate and enjoy beer.
Yeah, well, you've definitely succeeded in doing that. I think you're, for those who don't know where Silver Spring is, it's right on the northwest border of the District of Columbia. So you are, and you're right by the Red Line Metro
Yeah.
station, or relatively close. So
Mhm.
it's a great situation for you guys. I was looking on your. Oh, before I get to that, you um, have you gotten into the hard seltzer
We
deal?
have. That was, again, with the way the craft beer community is, everything is, you constantly have to adapt and all that.
Right.
With that being on the rise, we thought it did fit within our brand. If we're trying to provide a beverage for everyone, we originally didn't open with a full bar, but now we have a full bar with wine, liquor. We have a full kitchen. So I think having a hard seltzer that we produced because we had the ability to made sense. But we didn't want to do necessarily a large launch of it. Ours is Montgomery County focused specifically.
Uh-huh.
So we only self-distribute it, and the consumption is pretty high for just that small footprint in Montgomery County and through our tap room. So,
You mentioned the bourbon barrels.
Mhm.
Do you do any collaborations with any local distilleries or wineries? I know some other breweries do that. Is that where do you get your bourbon barrels?
I mean, it's been a mix, but we've usually used brokers, mainly
Uh-huh.
because when we fit it into production, um, we don't have the volume to source like a truckload, right? And so if we go to local distillers, they usually have barrels when we don't need them,
Yeah.
and then they dry out. So besides all those efforts for more localized barrels and such, we've been using brokers that get these efficiently, house them in Virginia, and then we'll get shipments of them periodically when we need to refresh them. I mean, bourbon barrel aged beers kind of need that fresh barrel, but wood barrels can be reused for other items, just as for the mixed culture stuff.
Since you did some brewing in Colorado, and I'm asking, this is really a question. This isn't just a setup question. I don't know because my background really is in wine.
Okay.
And I know in certain regions of the country, you can, certain, because of the grapes, because of the terroir, because of the climate, you can't really produce a particular type of wine because it just doesn't do well there. And I know that in beer, water is a
hmm
big uh, ingredient. I mean, that's why,
Sure.
those Coors is a big thing with their beer. Is there any beer that you could brew in Colorado or any type of beer that you could brew in Colorado that wouldn't be such a good idea to do here or vice versa? Have you found that?
Well, I mean, it depends if you're using just straight city water.
Mm-hmm.
Our water comes through a 3 cubic foot filtration system, then goes to a water softener. Um, but even the water analysis before that, the brewing water, at least that we get, both at our Silver Spring and our Riverdale Park location, is pretty ideal for brewing. Now, I've been told that other DC sources have not been as ideal,
Uh-huh.
but for ours specifically, um, we don't have the mix where like it pulls from a different location. We're just in a good location for the water source specifically, and we haven't seen fluctuations or anything like that. How we got lucky like that, I don't know. But Candace Silver Spring, it was something that we checked after the fact. We were lucky about that. And then luckily Riverdale was almost an exact match to our Silver Spring location to then scale up these beers.
So Silver Spring opened in 2014, correct?
hmm
And Riverdale Park opened last year, which would be 2019. Is that right?
Correct.
Uh, Tell me what about that decision? When did you have the idea that you would want to expand, or was that always part of the business plan? And why there?
It was always part of the business plan to expand, mainly because when we chose the Silver Spring location, it was filled with the amount of fermenters we could put in there, basically.
Uh-huh.
So the decision was like, are we trying to expand outside of this, or are we trying to just serve our customers that are coming directly here? And we were trying to obviously serve our customers coming there, and those are our main bread and butter people. But we were also trying to expand outside of it. So we invested in a bigger cooler versus serving tanks, where the beer would be served directly from the tanks themselves. Uh, we went a few years and we kind of like flatlined barrelage wise, and we realized we invested in a canning line. Canning, I call it canning filler because there's no line in that location. We're basically hand loading cans and hand unpacking them, and we were able to do a certain, get our name out there locally with our cans. And then due to that, it showed that we did have more demand. So we were able to secure a loan and put this into action. Now, granted, the whole goal of Riverdale as an expansion facility is produce more beer, more canned beer specifically, but we didn't want to give up on our, taproom experience. We do have full kitchen, full bar, all that. So we do have a nice, you know, one floor here. Obviously, there's three kind of bars at the old location. This is a little more manageable, but still the same full kitchen, full liquor, full wine experience. And we didn't want to give that up by just putting a production facility in the sticks somewhere. So.
Where can you? I know I'll tell everybody, and your website will be in the notes, in the show notes. You can go to. And I know you have the information there, but where locally, just off the top of your head, can you find your cans besides Riverdale and Silver Spring? Do you have? Are some local vendors carrying your beers, canned beers?
Are you talking about in Silver? Are we speaking Montgomery County specifically?
No.
I can pull up the delivery calendar right now if you want.
Whatever's easier. Whatever's easier.
I'm looking at our delivery calendar today. We went to Hoppin' Crew, Locavino, Mom's Organic, Delivery Choice Beer Wine, Tacoma Co-op, Sligo Creek Golf Course, Viridian Market, which is right next door to our Silver Spring location, Country Boy, Parkway Deli. The list goes on. Knoll Station. So I won't bore with the rest of it.
Now, I was down at Parkway Deli yesterday, getting a nice Reuben. What is there a particular beer that's more popular? What's your most popular beer in your cans?
We have different distribution outlets. So we distribute, obviously, Montgomery County. We distribute through Legends, which is in Northern Maryland and DC, and then we also have Ferment Nation, which is in the northern part of Virginia for us. And it kind of mixes. Down in Virginia, our Georgia Peach Berliner Weiss does really well there. Also, our third-party triple and our PGC Premium, which is a seasonal lager. In Montgomery County, Warm Bohemian, our Czech Pilsner, does really well. Animal Hazy IPA does well as well. And then for Legends, I would say our Animal is definitely the leader. And they as a company just sell a lot of IPA in general.
So what beer is near and dear to your heart? Do you have favorites? Everyone has a favorite. I know they're all your children, but if you could,
I have an affinity towards lagers specifically. So Warm Bohemian was the one beer that I was like, if we're doing this, I was like, we need to make a Czech Pilsner. Like there wasn't nobody in this area was making Czech Pilsner, or really just lagers at the time, except for Chop House, which is a DC brew pub. And I was just like, this is the beer that I want to drink. This is the beer that, based on data over decades, people want to drink, so let's make sure that we make a solid Pilsner. And that was the first beer we brewed. And again, here it is today, doing well for us. And just, in general, that's my favorite core. We also do this Maibach. It's called Macadocious. And I like it. That's actually probably my favorite shift beer, for better or for worse, because it is like 7.1% alcohol. But it's a pale lager that has a nice Whirlpool edition of Heel Melon hops, which has a little bit of Noble, a little bit of New World kind of character. And it's just like a nice drinking beer, kind of touches all the points for me specifically, except for Belgium, But
now, is that your own recipe? Did you sort of create that, or did you?
Yeah, I spent time in Germany at the end of the brewing school for Siebel. And, Hellesbach, Maibach was one of the lagers that really stood out to me to be able to drink over there specifically. I like both, Hellesbach just being a little bit lower in ABV, but I don't know, I just enjoy that malty sweetness that's not cloying. For lack of a better word, it's a beer you can sink your teeth into, while still being refreshing. So
okay, I'll have to check that one out. This is a question I like to ask everybody. If you could, and I'm going to use 2013 since you guys opened in 2014. If you could send a message back in time to yourself in 2013 and tell yourself something that you know now, but you didn't know then, but you wish you knew then,
right.
What would you tell yourself?
Loosely would be, don't try to do too much, especially with beer production. I came into this company as an owner operator while still having like a brewer mentality that's very much wanting to create new things and all that stuff. But again, you're trying to build a brand, not just for your company, but for the locals there, and create beers, of the highest quality that they want and that you also want to make, but they also want. So I think we spent a lot of time making, new beers that were interesting, but not necessarily necessary. So it was kind of like that brew pub mentality, but we were this mixed thing that was kind of new at the time.
Right.
When I started trying to get into beer, there was production facility and there was brew pub, and that was it. I wanted to go towards brew pub, even though it's a tougher business model, and they're having a tough time right now, specifically with COVID, with everything, because you got the ability to make the beer and see people enjoy it over the counter and have a little bit of creativity. Production breweries were more like manufacturing jobs. You're just getting it in, getting it out, kind of thing. Now, with basically when I was leaving Colorado, the taproom model kind of was getting bigger out there. So we decided to kind of lean that way. And because of that, I'm getting a little bit farther down the rabbit hole. But basically, I think I lost the vision that we needed to create these beers and grow them versus growing a bunch of different beers.
Right.
And we, as a company, we've done that, I think, over the last few years, and really dialed back a lot of the brands in volume, what we produce. But we produce them in smaller volumes for our taproom and more local community so that we can have that creativity on site, but really focus on, getting these beers out in the world as best we can, the core ones.
Well, speaking of the taproom model or the beer pub model, you kind of led into what I was going to ask you next. In future plans, do you have any future plans, projects, events you'd like to tell everybody about? And how are you all dealing with the pandemic as far as serving your customers? Yeah, how can we get your beer? In other words.
Yeah. Well, there's first we'll talk about what we're doing production wise. When we didn't know if we could serve people in the restaurant, all that stuff, beer production shifted drastically to just Riverdale, and anything that we're putting into cans is what we're producing. Since the summer that we have basically been able to operate, people have been coming out, supporting us, which we appreciate. They're continuing to in the beginning of November here. We basically started producing smaller volumes of beer to have people come on site and just have a little bit more unique experience than just, whatever we're putting into cans. We've also had a lot of barrel-aged projects that we're able to blend and put in bottles. So we've invested in a small bottle filler. We have these 375 ml bottles on site. We're releasing actually 2 new ones. I'm pretty sure we'll be here for Thanksgiving. One is actually a repeat. It's the Chapless Horseman, our bourbon barrel-aged Russian Imperial Stout. The other one is called Nocciola, which is Baltic Porter that was aged in bourbon barrels. And then we add a hazelnut flavoring to it at the end to kind of give like a digestive kind of aspect to it, Frangelico, if you will.
Wow.
And hopefully that will be released right before Thanksgiving. So beyond that, we're still doing mixed culture stuff. So we have our Berry Petite will be rebottled again, probably in 2021. And we're doing new barrel projects in bottles specifically. Beyond that, though, we're also doing some throwback seasonals for our original customers. We had Short Session, which is this West Coast, basically a triple IPA, like 10% alcohol. And, there's been a lot of loyal customers in Silver Spring that have asked for this beer. So we're taking the time now, because we have the production throughput, to create it, put it in a bottle, and so they can have something remembering better times,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, that's
we're
not all right. Well, I'm going to give you the last word on craft brewing. Tell about the craft brewing industry in Maryland. Is there anything you want to let the audience know about what's going on here in Maryland? And just, are there here's another one. Are there any misconceptions about craft beer that you'd like to clear up? If there, yeah, or anything, about craft beer, but tell us about the craft beer industry in Maryland, and we'll finish up there.
I think think you originally asked, is there anything that distinguished it from the rest of the nation? And it's kind of talking with Brian, our marketing director, about it nowadays. It's almost like, I think of like Nashville hot chicken, right? Not doesn't have that big of history, but somehow now you can get it everywhere in the U.S. I think, the first wave of craft brewers, they didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. Their best examples were reading obscure books and drinking beer. And then, that's like, let's call it late 80s, early 90s. And then 2000s, like, created this generation of some experienced people in the US that are then experimenting. And now, because of the internet and those people, who've either traveled out to Colorado, to the West Coast, have come back home and are brewing here now. I think that all the information is kind of everywhere. And now you're able to get all these different styles. Like when I was in Colorado, that was only 6 years ago. It was hard to find a lager.
Wow.
Because they were making like West Coast IPA and like they were really Colorado focused.
Yeah.
Distributors and all that stuff, which is great. But now, in DC, greater DMV area, the DC market has had access to all different kinds of beers because the distribution laws have been so lax that people could bring them in. So I feel when craft brewers came here and started building breweries, the market almost had these expectations that you had to do everything. You couldn't just do the one thing. So I feel like a lot of breweries here end up, doing trendy things, doing traditional things, doing barrel aging because the market demands it, because they've had access to it, but not through like a local level for the longest time. So I would say that the DMV area jumped into it, whole body, not just putting the toe into it, and they're getting their legs under them, continually. So.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a great answer, by the way. So, Jeff Ramirez, thank you very much for your time. I'd like to recommend, I've been to your place in Silver Spring more than a few times. For those of you who frequent Silver Spring and haven't been there and would like to, drink a pint or two, I highly recommend you stop by. I'm going to check out your Riverdale site. Don't get over to PG a lot. I used to sell houses. So I did a lot of work over there, but now I have a reason to go over there and frequent.
Well, both locations too, you can order online, any of the beer that we offer to take out, whether it be in bottle, can, growler. We even do direct-to-consumer deliveries if people want that still, or we'll drive it to a certain location. Not really sure the radius right now. We've expanded a little bit into Northeast DC and into Prince George's County, but something to look into if you're looking for beer brought to your home.
And like I said, the link to the website will be in the show notes. So,
yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I'll be seeing you soon.
All right. Thanks, Howard.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Well, that's another show in the books. I'd like to thank Jeff and all the great people down at Denizens for sharing a little virtual time with us. If you ever find yourself here in the DMV, you have got to check out Denizens Brewing in Silver Spring or in Riverdale. Tell them that Howard sent you. Now, that's not going to save you any money, but I just love when people drop my name. I'd also like to ask you to please subscribe to the pod if you have not already done so. I'll introduce you to some of the best folks in the DMV and surrounding areas, and that is a promise. Please tell your friends about us and have them tune in. They will thank you for it, and I know I will. I'm all about promoting the craft beverage industry in the DMV because it's some of the best in the nation, if not the world. And if you agree with that, please share the pod. The more it grows, the more I can get the word out, the more we can support these small businesses and promote the craft beverage culture in the DMV. And that, my friends, is a great thing. This podcast was produced by my friends at Q9. Listen, if they can make a hack like me sound good, imagine what they could do for someone who is a little less hackish. If you're in the podcast biz, please Google Q9 and ask about their services. They're worth a peek, trust me. I'll be back next week with another craft beverage maker in the DMV to introduce you to. I know there is a ton of media out there that you could be listening to besides me, and that's why I work so hard to bring you the content that I do. I truly appreciate your time investment in me, so thanks again for listening. And remember, always have a designated driver, so I'll see you next time. East Ficata.
You have been listening to Barrel Tasting with Howard Fletcher, part of the Fletcher Podcast Group. You can reach Howard at his website, barreltastingpod.com. I'm Asia Blue. Thanks for listening. See you next time.